The sky over New York turned dark at noon. Not because of clouds, not because of storms. It was because of ships. Hundreds of them. They hung in the air above the city like a black ceiling, blotting out the sun, casting long shadows over buildings that had stood for over a century. People ran into the streets, looked up, and froze. Phones came out. Cameras pointed skyward, but no one screamed. There was something about the size of these ships, the sheer scale of them, that made screaming feel useless. General Sarah Cole stood in the underground command center beneath Colorado, watching the same footage on a dozen screens. Her coffee had gone cold 2 hours ago. She hadn't touched it since the first alarm came through. "Report," she said, her voice flat and controlled, though her hands were clenched behind her back. Major Tom Whitfield looked up from his console, his face pale. "Ma'am, we count 412 capital ships in orbit. Configuration doesn't match anything in our database. They just appeared. No warning, no gradual approach. One moment the sky was clear, the next moment it wasn't. Faster than light travel," Cole muttered. "Confirmed then." "Looks that way, ma'am." The screens flickered, and a new signal came through. It wasn't audio. It wasn't video. It was something else entirely. A signal that seemed to arrive in every language spoken on Earth at the same time. Translated instantly, understood instantly, by everyone who saw it. The words appeared on every screen, every phone, every television across the planet. "We are the Vorn Empire. We have claimed this system. Your species will surrender all weapons, all military assets, and all governing authority, within 72 hours. Resistance will result in the destruction of your cities, one by one, until compliance is achieved. This is not a negotiation. This is an order." Silence filled the command center. Cole read the words 3 times before she spoke again. "Get me the president. Get me NATO command. Get me every allied nation's defense minister on a secure line. Now." 3,000 miles away, in a small, quiet town in Nebraska, a boy named Ethan Cole watched the message appear on his tablet during math class. His teacher, Mrs. Alvarez, had gone pale and told everyone to stay calm, though her voice was shaking. Ethan didn't know that his mother, General Sarah Cole, was at that very moment fighting to keep the entire planet from panicking. He just knew that something enormous had happened, something that made even adults look scared. He didn't know yet that his mother had spent the last 6 years working on a secret that would change everything. The meeting inside the Pentagon's deepest bunker lasted 4 hours. President Diane Torres sat at the head of the table, flanked by generals, scientists, and diplomats from a dozen countries, who had been flown in on emergency transports the moment the alien fleet arrived. The mood was grim. Many in the room wanted to surrender immediately. Some believed fighting was pointless against a civilization that could cross the stars in an instant. "We don't even know their weapons capability," said the Secretary of Defense, Robert Chen, rubbing his temples. "We don't know their numbers beyond what's in orbit. For all we know, that's a fraction of their total fleet." "And if we surrender," Cole said, standing at the far end of the table, "we hand our entire species over to a power that just gave us an ultimatum without so much as a greeting. They didn't ask to meet us. They didn't ask what we wanted. They gave us 72 hours and a threat." "What choice do we have, General?" asked Chen. "You've seen the ships. 400 capital vessels. We don't have anything close to that." Cole was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at President Torres. "Madam President, I need to remind this room of Project Ironclad." A murmur went through the table. Only a handful of people in the room, and in the entire government, knew what those words meant. "Explain," Torres said. 6 years ago, Cole said, after the deep space telescopes detected unusual gravitational anomalies near the edge of our solar system, a joint task force was formed. We called it Project Ironclad. Its purpose was simple: prepare Earth for the possibility of first contact, and prepare for the possibility that first contact would not be friendly. We didn't know what we were preparing for. We just knew that if something arrived, we could not afford to be defenseless. "You built ships," Torres said slowly. "We built a fleet," Cole said, "hidden in the asteroid belt, disguised as mining operations and research stations. 216 warships, built using technology recovered from a probe that crashed in Siberia 8 years ago. Technology none of us fully understood, until we reverse-engineered it piece by piece. We call it the Vanguard Fleet. It has never been tested in real combat. But it exists, and it is armed. The room fell into stunned silence. Why wasn't I told about this? Torres asked, though her tone wasn't angry, just tired. You were, Madam President, during your security briefing on your first day in office. It's possible it got lost among 1,000 other classified programs. I'm telling you now because we need it. If we're going to answer this ultimatum, we need every asset we have, and we need to move within hours, not days. Torres looked around the room. The scientists were murmuring to each other. The generals were staring at Cole with a mixture of shock and something like hope. 216 ships against 412, Chen said. Those aren't good odds, General. No, Cole agreed. But we won't be fighting with just numbers. We'll be fighting with surprise, with knowledge of our own system that they don't have, and with something the Vorn Empire clearly doesn't expect from a species they've never even bothered to study up close: the will to fight back. Torres was quiet for a long moment, then she straightened her shoulders. Bring the fleet home, General, and get me every scientist who worked on that technology in this room within the hour. If we're going to war, I want to understand exactly what we're fighting with. The order went out in encrypted bursts across a network built specifically for this purpose. Deep in the asteroid belt, hidden inside hollowed-out rocks that had been carefully shaped to look like natural debris, the Vanguard fleet came to life. Reactors that had been idling for years surged to full power. Docking clamps released. 216 ships, sleek and dark, built from alloys that shimmered faintly, even in the dim light of the outer solar system, began to move. Captain Marcus Reyes stood on the bridge of the UES Valiant, the flagship of the fleet, watching as the order scrolled across his display. He had trained for this moment for 6 years without ever truly believing it would come. He had run 1,000 simulations, prepared for every scenario his mind could imagine, and yet none of it had prepared him for the reality of the message now blinking on his screen. First contact confirmed. Hostile. Vanguard Fleet. Proceed to Earth orbit. Engage on arrival of alien forces, or on order from command. All hands, Reyes said, his voice carrying through the ship's intercom, steady despite the pounding of his heart. This is the moment we trained for. I won't pretend the odds are in our favor, but I will tell you this. We built these ships because we believed that no matter what came from beyond the stars, humanity would not go quietly into the dark. Today, we proved that belief was correct. Prepare for departure. Full burn to Earth. Across the fleet, 216 engines ignited at once, throwing plumes of blue-white light across the black of space. The ships that had waited silently for 6 years, hidden from prying eyes, now surged forward, racing toward a homeworld that didn't yet know they existed. Back on Earth, the 72-hour countdown ticked steadily downward. Cities emptied as people fled to whatever shelter they could find, though everyone knew that no basement or bunker would protect them from orbital bombardment if the Vorn Empire decided to make good on its threat. Governments scrambled to organize evacuations that everyone understood were mostly symbolic. If the aliens attacked from orbit, there would be nowhere truly safe. In the Vorn flagship, hanging silently above the Pacific Ocean, Overlord Kath observed the tiny blue planet below, with something between curiosity and contempt. Kath was old, even by Vorn standards, having conquered 11 worlds across 3 star systems in his 300 years of service to the Empire. He had seen species beg for mercy, seen entire governments dissolve within hours of an ultimatum. He expected nothing different from this one. Report on their military capability, Kath said to his second-in-command, a sharp-eyed officer named Threll. Minimal, Overlord, Threll replied, studying a data display filled with images of tanks, jet fighters, and naval vessels. Primitive projectile weapons, chemical propulsion for their aircraft, no evidence of any spacefaring military assets beyond a handful of satellites, and a small orbital station. As expected, Kath said, they will surrender within the hour, once the fear sets in fully. It always does. There is something odd, Overlord, Threll said, frowning at another display. Our long-range sensors are detecting unusual energy signatures in what they call their asteroid belt. Faint, but present. Similar patterns detected 6 months ago during our approach, then, but we assumed it was natural stellar interference. Kath turned slowly. Show me. The display shifted, showing a rough map of the outer solar system, with faint clusters of light scattered among the asteroid field. Could be mineral deposits, Threll offered. Metallic asteroids can sometimes. Send a scout wing, Kath interrupted. 12 ships. I want to know what that is before our deadline expires. Threll bowed his head and relayed the order. Far above Earth, 12 smaller Vorn vessels broke away from the main fleet and began accelerating outward, toward the belt of rock and ice where, unknown to them, 216 human warships were already racing in the opposite direction, straight toward Earth. Hours passed. The countdown ticked past the halfway mark. In the White House Situation Room, President Torres watched a live feed from a satellite that somehow still had a connection, showing the massive Vorn fleet still hanging silently above the planet. No attack yet, no further communication either. Status on Vanguard fleet? She asked. 6 hours out, Madam President, Cole answered, standing beside her, eyes fixed on a tactical display. They're maintaining stealth protocols, moving along a trajectory, designed to avoid detection for as long as possible. And the scout ships the Vorn sent toward the belt? Our fleet detected them 2 hours ago. They're on a collision course, though the Vorn scouts likely don't know that yet. Vanguard fleet is holding formation, waiting for the right moment. Torres exhaled slowly. What happens if they see our fleet before we're ready? Cole's jaw tightened. Then the element of surprise is gone, and we fight a much harder battle. But Captain Reyes and his crews are the best we have. If anyone can handle this, it's them. Aboard the Valiant, Reyes stared at the tactical display showing 12 incoming Vorn scout ships, still unaware of the human fleet's exact position. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Amara Singh, looked up from her console. Captain, they're closing fast. Estimated contact in 40 minutes if we hold current course. Reyes considered his options. Engaging now would reveal the fleet's position and strength far earlier than planned, giving the main Vorn armada time to prepare. But letting the scouts pass unchallenged risked them reporting back with detailed sensor data on the fleet's exact composition and capabilities. Options, XO? Reyes asked, turning to his executive officer, Commander Elena Vasquez. We could let a small squadron peel off and intercept quietly, Vasquez suggested. 10 ships against their 12. Use the ion disruptors to knock out their communications before they can transmit anything back to the main fleet. Quick, quiet, and it keeps the rest of the fleet hidden. Reyes nodded slowly. Do it. Squadron Bravo, peel off and intercept. Silent running. Ion disruptors only until we confirm their communications are down. I want those scouts blind before they know we're even here. 10 human ships broke formation, engines dimmed to minimize their heat signature, and began closing on the unsuspecting Vorn scouts. It would be the first engagement of the war, though neither side yet knew just how much would change in the hours that followed. The countdown continued. 68 hours remained until the ultimatum's deadline, but for 12 Vorn scout ships drifting through the cold silence of the asteroid belt, the countdown to their own encounter with humanity's hidden fleet was already down to minutes, and none of them had any idea what was about to happen. Far below, on the surface of a planet the Vorn Empire believed to be helpless, humanity held its breath and waited to see if 6 years of secret preparation would be enough to change the fate of an entire species. Squadron Bravo moved through the dark like ghosts. 10 human warships, engines throttled down to almost nothing, drifted on momentum alone, using the scattered rocks of the asteroid belt as cover. Commander Elena Vasquez sat in the lead ship, the UES Hornet, watching the 12 Vorn scout vessels grow larger on her display with every passing minute. Range, 3,000 kilometers, said her weapons officer. They still don't see us. Keep it that way, Vasquez said quietly, as if speaking too loudly might somehow give them away across the vacuum of space. Ion disruptors charged? Charged and ready, Commander. The Vorn scout ships moved in a loose formation, clearly not expecting any threat. Why would they? As far as the Vorn knew, this system held nothing but a primitive species with chemical rockets, and no spacefaring military. They were simply investigating a strange energy reading, nothing more. Range, 2,000 kilometers, the weapons officer reported. Vasquez studied the formation. The 12 ships were spread out just enough that a single strike wouldn't catch them all. She needed precision, not brute force. Split into 3 groups of 3, plus 1 reserve group, she ordered. Each group targets one section of their formation simultaneously. Ion disruptors first. Full spread. I want their sensors and communications knocked out in the same instant, before any of them can send a warning back to the main fleet. The 10 ships adjusted course slightly, silent as the void around them, sliding into position around the unsuspecting scouts. Range, 1,000 kilometers, all groups in position. Vasquez took a breath. Fire. 10 ships unleashed a coordinated burst of ion energy at once. Unlike traditional weapons, ion disruptors didn't destroy a ship outright. They overloaded electrical systems, frying sensors, communications arrays, and often propulsion systems, in a single strike. It was a weapon built for exactly this kind of situation, developed specifically because the engineers behind Project Ironclad had planned for a scenario where humanity needed to disable an enemy without immediately escalating to full destruction. The 12 Vorn scout ships lit up with brief flashes of light as the ion burst struck their hulls. Alarms blared inside each vessel as systems failed all at once. Sensors went dark. Communication arrays melted into useless slag. Several ships lost power entirely, drifting helplessly in the dark. Report, Vasquez said. All 12 ships disabled, Commander. No return fire. No communications transmitted. They never saw us. Vasquez allowed herself a small breath of relief. Squadron Bravo. Hold position. Send a report back to the Valiant. First engagement, complete success. 0 casualties on our side. Aboard the drifting Vorn scout lead ship, Commander Threll's junior officer, a younger Vorn named Isik, stared in confusion at the dead consoles around him. Emergency lighting flickered weakly overhead. What happened? Isik demanded, though there was no one left to answer him properly, since half the bridge crew were still trying to restart basic systems. Unknown, came a garbled reply from the engineering deck. All primary systems failed simultaneously. No impact detected. No visible weapons fire. It's as if something reached out and touched every system at once. Isik felt something he hadn't felt in decades of service to the Empire. Fear. Not fear of an enemy fleet, because he couldn't see one. Fear of the unknown. Of a threat that could disable 12 advanced vessels without a single visible shot being fired. Attempt emergency broadcast, Isik ordered. Communications array is completely destroyed, sir. We can't send anything. Isik stared out through the viewport at the endless field of asteroids, silent and dark, and wondered what exactly was hiding among them. 6 hours later, the main body of the Vanguard fleet arrived in Earth orbit, having slipped past the Vorn's outer sensor net, using a combination of stealth coatings developed from the recovered Siberian technology and a careful approach vector plotted to avoid direct line of sight with Vorn scanning arrays. 206 ships, having left 10 behind with Squadron Bravo, took up defensive positions on the far side of the moon, using its bulk to hide their exact numbers and positions from the Vorn fleet still hanging above Earth. Captain Reyes stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching a live feed relayed from Earth Command showing the Vorn Armada still positioned above the planet's major population centers. The countdown clock on his display read 59 hours until the ultimatum's deadline. Status report, Reyes said. All 206 ships in position behind the lunar mass, Captain, Vasquez reported, having rejoined the main fleet after her squadron's successful mission. Stealth systems holding steady. No indication the Vorn have detected our presence. And the 12 disabled scout ships? Still drifting in the belt, Captain. No rescue attempt detected yet. It's possible the Vorn haven't even realized they've lost contact with that scouting group. Reyes nodded slowly, studying the tactical display. 412 Vorn ships against 216 human vessels, though the odds had shifted slightly in humanity's favor after neutralizing the 12 scouts without loss. Still, nearly 2 to 1, and that assumed the Vorn had no reinforcements waiting beyond the edge of the system, an assumption Reyes wasn't willing to make. "Get me General Cole," Reyes said. Moments later, Cole's face appeared on his display, transmitted through a heavily encrypted channel, bounced off 3 separate relay satellites to avoid any chance of Vorn interception. "Captain Reyes," Cole said. "Good work with the scouts. How does the fleet look?" "Ready, General, but I need to know the plan. We can't hide behind the moon forever, and eventually the Vorn are going to notice 12 of their scouts have gone dark." Cole's expression was grim. "The President has decided against surrender. We're going to answer the ultimatum with force, but we need to be smart about it. A direct confrontation between 412 of their ships and 206 of yours would be a slaughter, no matter how good your crews are. Agreed, Reyes said. So what's the plan? We use what we know about our own system, that they don't, Cole said. Dr. Ewan and the science team have been analyzing the Vorn ship designs, based on scans taken during the 6 months their fleet has been approaching. Their shields are powerful against sustained energy weapons, designed to withstand exactly the kind of prolonged bombardment a fleet like theirs typically faces. But our ion disruptors work differently. They don't try to break through shields with brute force. They exploit gaps in shield harmonics to deliver disabling strikes directly to a ship's internal systems. That's how Squadron Bravo took down the scouts without losses, Reyes said, understanding dawning. Exactly. But that technology has limited range and requires close engagement to work effectively. We can't use it against their entire fleet from a distance. That means we need to draw them into a fight where our ships get close enough to use it, without exposing ourselves to their heavier weapons in open space. The asteroid belt, Reyes said slowly. Precisely, Cole confirmed. Dr. Ewan's team has identified over a dozen large asteroid clusters within striking distance of Earth that could provide cover for exactly the kind of close-range engagement we need. If we can lure a significant portion of the Vorn fleet into pursuing us there, we can use the terrain to our advantage, closing the range gap and neutralizing their numerical superiority. Reyes considered this. That means giving up our position, revealing the fleet to draw them out. Yes, Cole said. The plan requires the Vanguard fleet to make its presence known, provoke an attack, and then retreat toward the belt in a way that looks like desperation rather than strategy. We need the Vorn to believe they're chasing a fleeing, disorganized force, not being led into a trap. Reyes exhaled slowly. It was a dangerous plan, one that required perfect timing and discipline from every crew in the fleet. One mistake, one ship breaking formation too early or too late, could unravel the entire strategy and expose the fleet to annihilation in open space. When do we move? Reyes asked. The ultimatum deadline is 59 hours out, Cole said. President Torres wants to make our presence known well before that deadline expires, both to show the Vorn we won't surrender and to give us time to execute the full engagement before they can bring any additional reinforcements to bear. You'll receive final orders within the hour. Good luck, Captain. The transmission ended, and Reyes turned to his bridge crew, all of whom had heard every word of the exchange. You all know what's coming, Reyes said. In a few hours, we're going to reveal ourselves to an armada more than twice our size, and then we're going to run, and hope they follow us exactly where we want them to go. I won't lie to any of you. This is going to be the most dangerous thing any of us have ever done. But I believe in this crew, and I believe in every crew across this fleet. We didn't spend 6 years building these ships in secret, just to hide from a fight when it finally came. Aboard the Vorn flagship, Overlord Kath had grown impatient. The 12 scout ships sent to investigate the strange energy readings in the asteroid belt had failed to report back, and attempts to re-establish contact had all failed. Send a larger force, Kath ordered Threll. 50 ships this time. I want answers, and I want them before the deadline expires. Yes, Overlord, Threll said, though something in his tone suggested unease. Before the order could be fully relayed, an alarm sounded across the bridge. A junior sensor officer called out urgently. Overlord, long-range sensors detecting a large fleet emerging from behind the lunar body. Estimated 200 vessels, unknown configuration. Kath's eyes narrowed as he turned to the main display, watching as the human fleet, no longer hidden, revealed itself in full for the first time. 206 sleek, dark ships moved out from behind Earth's moon, forming into a loose defensive formation. Impossible, Threll murmured. Our sensors indicated no spacefaring military capability. Clearly, our sensors were wrong, Kath said coldly, though there was something almost like respect buried beneath his anger. This changes things. This is no longer a simple conquest. Bring the fleet to full alert. All ships, prepare for engagement. Across the vast Vorn armada, hundreds of warships began powering weapon systems, shifting from their orbital positions above Earth's cities into a battle formation designed to overwhelm the newly revealed human fleet through sheer numerical superiority. They mean to fight us, Threll said, watching the human ships hold their position. neither advancing nor retreating, simply standing their ground in full view of an enemy fleet twice their size. "Then we will oblige them," Koth said. "Send 250 ships to engage. Hold the remainder in reserve above the planet's major cities, in case this is merely a distraction while they attempt something else. I want this human fleet destroyed, but I do not want to be caught unprepared if they have another trick waiting." 250 Vorn warships broke away from the main armada and began accelerating toward the waiting human fleet, weapons charging, confident in their vastly superior numbers. Aboard the Valiant, Captain Reyes watched the massive Vorn force approaching on his tactical display, exactly as General Cole had predicted. "They're taking the bait," Reyes said. "All ships, hold position until my order. Then begin the retreat pattern toward Asteroid Cluster 7. I want this to look exactly like what it's supposed to look like, a desperate fleet running for its life." "And if they don't follow us all the way into the belt?" Vasquez asked. Reyes's jaw tightened as he watched the 250 Vorn ships close the distance, weapons fire beginning to light up the space between the fleets in brilliant flashes of energy. "Then we adapt," he said. "But right now, everything is going exactly according to plan. Helm, prepare to execute retreat vector on my mark." The battle for Earth had truly begun, and 206 human ships now carried the weight of an entire species on their hulls as they turned and began a carefully orchestrated retreat, leading a pursuing armada straight toward the trap waiting among the asteroids. Energy fire lit up the black of space as the human fleet began its retreat, weaving between bursts of Vorn weapons fire that streaked past hulls by mere meters. Captain Reyes gripped the arms of his command chair as the Valiant shook from a near miss, the ship's shields flaring bright blue as they absorbed the edge of an energy blast. "Shields at 92%, Vasquez called out. "Minor damage to outer hull plating, deck 7, no casualties." "Keep us moving," Reyes ordered. "Helm, maintain retreat vector, but don't make it look too smooth. I want them thinking we're barely holding formation." The pilot, a young woman named Lieutenant Priya Nair, adjusted the ship's course with small, deliberate imperfections, weaving the massive vessel in a pattern that looked like panic, but was in fact carefully rehearsed during countless simulations over the past 6 years. Behind them, 250 Vorn warships pressed the pursuit, confident in their numbers, firing continuously at the retreating human fleet. Several human ships took hits, shields absorbing most of the damage, though a few vessels reported minor hull breaches. "Distance to Asteroid Cluster 7? Reyes asked. 12 minutes at current speed, Captain," Nair reported. "Time until the Vorn fleet catches up to our slowest ships?" "At current rate of pursuit, approximately 14 minutes. Reyes's jaw tightened. It would be close. Closer than he liked. If even a few of the slower human vessels fell behind, they would be exposed and destroyed before reaching the safety of the asteroid field. "All ships, adjust formation," Reyes ordered through the fleet-wide channel. "Faster vessels, fall back slightly, and provide covering fire for our slower ships. I don't want to lose a single vessel before we reach the belt." Across the fleet, ships began shifting positions, faster vessels dropping back to screen the more vulnerable transports and support ships that made up part of the Vanguard fleet's mixed formation. Weapons fire from the human ships, though far less powerful than the Vorn's main batteries, began targeting incoming projectiles and energy blasts, intercepting some of the more dangerous shots aimed at the slower vessels. Aboard the pursuing Vorn command ship, Threll watched the human retreat with growing suspicion. "Something is wrong," he said to Koth, who had joined the pursuit force aboard a secondary command vessel to personally oversee what he expected to be a swift and total victory. "Their formation, it's too disciplined for a species in panic. Look at how their faster ships are protecting the slower ones. That's not the behavior of a fleet running blindly for its life." Kath studied the tactical display, his ancient eyes narrowing as he considered Threll's words. "You believe this is a trap. I believe we should proceed with caution, Overlord." Kath was quiet for a long moment, watching the retreating human ships draw closer to a dense field of asteroids that stretched for thousands of kilometers. "Caution has never won an empire, Threll, but your instincts have served me well before. Order the fleet to slow their pursuit slightly. Let us see what they intend before we commit fully to the asteroid field." The order went out, and the pursuing Vorn ships eased off slightly, no longer closing the distance as quickly as before. Aboard the Valiant, Reyes noticed the change immediately. "They're slowing down," Vasquez reported, confusion evident in her voice. "Why would they do that? They have us outnumbered and outgunned." Reyes studied the tactical display, watching the Vorn formation carefully. "They suspect something. We need to make this look even more convincing, or they'll hold back at the edge of the belt and we'll lose our advantage. What do you suggest, Captain?" Reyes considered the situation for a long moment before making a decision that carried significant risk. "Order 3 of our support ships, the ones with the least combat value, to break formation and make a run for open space, away from the belt. Make it look like panic, like some crews have lost their nerve and are trying to escape independently, rather than following the fleet's retreat." "Captain, those ships would be exposed. The Vorn would likely destroy them." "I know," Reyes said grimly. "But if it convinces the Vorn that our fleet truly is in disarray, it might be enough to draw their main force fully into the belt. Sometimes war requires difficult choices, Commander." "Give the order." 3 human support vessels, their crews briefed in advance on the risk they were being asked to take as part of the overall strategy, broke away from the main formation and began accelerating away from the asteroid field, directly into open space where Vorn weapons had a clear line of fire. Kath watched this development with something approaching satisfaction. "There, panic, exactly as I suspected. Destroy those 3 ships, and press the pursuit into the belt. This confirms their fleet is disorganized and desperate." Vorn weapons fire converged on the 3 fleeing human vessels. 2 were destroyed within moments, their hulls breaking apart in bright flashes of light. The 3rd managed to evade for slightly longer, before a concentrated barrage tore through its shields and destroyed it as well. Aboard the Valiant, Reyes watched the destruction of the 3 ships with a heavy heart, though he kept his expression controlled for the sake of his crew. Every life lost was a cost he would carry, but the sacrifice had achieved exactly what he hoped. "Vorn fleet resuming full pursuit speed," Vasquez reported. "They're committing fully to the chase now, Captain." "Then let's give them somewhere to chase us to," Reyes said quietly. "All ships, enter asteroid cluster 7. Execute formation ironclad on my mark." The remaining 203 human warships plunged into the dense asteroid field, weaving between massive chunks of rock and ice that had drifted undisturbed for billions of years. 250 Vorn warships followed close behind, their larger and less maneuverable vessels beginning to struggle with the tight, chaotic terrain in a way the smaller, more agile human ships did not. Deep within the asteroid cluster, hidden among the largest rocks, additional elements of the human fleet waited in ambush. 13 ships that had been held in reserve, positioned days earlier during the fleet's initial approach to Earth, powered up their weapons systems as the pursuing Vorn armada entered the trap. "All reserve elements, stand by," came the order from Reyes. "Wait for my signal." The human fleet, having led the Vorn deep into the asteroid cluster, suddenly reversed course in a coordinated maneuver that had been rehearsed countless times in simulation. Rather than continuing to flee, the retreating ships turned to face their pursuers, closing the distance rapidly, exactly the kind of close-range engagement the ion disruptor weapons were designed for. "Formation ironclad, execute," Reyes ordered. 203 human ships surged forward, closing the gap with the confused and disorganized Vorn fleet, which had not expected its supposedly fleeing enemy to suddenly turn and attack. At the same moment, 13 hidden reserve ships opened fire from concealed positions among the asteroids, catching the Vorn formation in a devastating crossfire. Ion disruptors flared to life across the human fleet, striking Vorn ships at close range and disabling their systems in rapid succession. Unlike the 12 scout ships destroyed earlier through stealth, this engagement was a full battle, with both sides exchanging heavy weapons fire amid the chaos of the asteroid field. "Multiple Vorn vessels disabled," Vasquez called out over the noise of the bridge, alarms blaring as the Valiant took hits from return fire. "We're inflicting heavy damage, Captain, but they still outnumber us significantly." Kath, aboard his command vessel, watched in disbelief as ship after ship in his formation went dark, disabled by weapons technology his species had never before encountered. "Impossible," he snarled. "This primitive species should not possess weapons capable of this." "Overlord, we're taking heavy losses," Threll reported, his voice tight with tension. "Recommend immediate withdrawal from the asteroid field." "No," Kath said sharply. "We have them outnumbered still. Concentrate fire on their largest vessels, break their formation, and this battle will turn in our favor. Vorn ships began targeting the larger human warships, including the Valiant itself, focusing their combined firepower in an attempt to eliminate the fleet's command structure. "Captain, we're taking sustained fire," Vasquez reported urgently. "Shields down to 60% and dropping fast." Reyes gripped his chair as the ship rocked from another impact. "Evasive maneuvers, and redirect power from non-essential systems to shields. Weapons officer, target their lead command vessels. If we can disable their command structure, it might create enough confusion to turn this battle decisively." Lieutenant Singh worked quickly at her console, coordinating targeting data across multiple human ships to concentrate fire on the Vorn command vessels that Kath and Threll were using to direct the battle. "Multiple ships targeting designated command vessels," Singh reported. "Ion disruptors charging for concentrated strike." The coordinated human strike hit 3 Vorn command ships simultaneously, overloading their systems and disabling their ability to coordinate the wider Vorn formation. Without centralized command, the remaining Vorn ships began to fight in a more disorganized manner, no longer executing the kind of coordinated tactics that had made their numerical advantage so dangerous. "Their formation is breaking down," Vasquez reported, a note of cautious hope entering her voice. "Multiple Vorn ships operating independently now, no longer following coordinated attack patterns." "Press the advantage," Reyes ordered. "All ships, continue engaging disabled and disorganized enemy vessels, but maintain formation discipline. Don't let overconfidence break our own coordination." The battle raged on for nearly 40 minutes. Human ships weaving through the asteroid field, using its cover and their superior maneuverability to offset the Vorn's larger and more heavily armed vessels. Slowly but steadily, the tide of the battle began to shift, as more and more Vorn ships were disabled or destroyed, their disorganized formation unable to bring their full firepower to bear effectively. Aboard Koth's command vessel, damage reports poured in from across the fleet. Nearly 100 ships had been disabled or destroyed, a staggering loss that Kath had never anticipated when he ordered the pursuit into the asteroid field. "Overlord, we must withdraw," Threll insisted, his voice carrying an urgency that bordered on desperation. "If we continue this engagement, we risk losing this entire strike force." Kath's expression, for the first time since arriving in Earth's system, showed something close to genuine concern. "Order a full withdrawal," he finally said, the words clearly bitter to speak. "Regroup with the main fleet above the planet. This species has proven far more capable than our initial assessments indicated. We will need to reconsider our approach." The surviving Vorn ships, badly battered and reduced from 250 to barely 140 combat-capable vessels, began retreating from the asteroid field, pursued briefly by the human fleet, before Reyes called off the chase, unwilling to risk overextending his own forces. "They're retreating, Captain," Vasquez reported, relief evident in her voice. "The battle is over." Reyes allowed himself a moment to breathe, watching the shattered remains of the Vorn strike force fleeing back toward Earth orbit. Casualty report. "We lost 11 ships in the engagement, Captain, plus the 3 we sacrificed earlier to sell the retreat. Total losses of 14 vessels out of our original 216. It was a painful cost, but far less than anyone had dared hope for against a fleet that had entered the battle with more than double their numbers." "Send a full report to General Cole and President Torres," Reyes said quietly. "Tell them the Vanguard fleet has won its first major engagement, but tell them also that this war is far from over. The Vorn Empire still has more than 150 ships remaining above Earth, and Overlord Kaeth is not the kind of enemy who accepts defeat easily." As the human fleet began recovering from the battle, tending to damaged ships and honoring the sacrifice of those lost, few aboard the Vanguard fleet doubted that the true test of humanity's resolve was still ahead of them. Overlord Koth stood alone in his private chambers aboard the Vorn flagship, staring out at the stars through a viewport that stretched the length of the room. 300 years of conquest, 11 worlds brought under Vorn rule, and never before had he lost a battle so decisively. The humiliation burned deeper than any wound. Threll entered quietly, waiting until Koth acknowledged his presence before speaking. "Overlord, the fleet has completed repairs on the ships that could be salvaged. We have 138 combat-capable vessels remaining, plus the 162 ships held in reserve above the planet that did not participate in the failed pursuit. 300 total, Kath said quietly, still facing the stars. Still more than this human fleet, even after their victory. Yes, Overlord, but their tactics, their weapons technology, it defies everything our intelligence suggested about this species. Our reports called them primitive, chemical rockets and basic radio communication. Nothing suggested they possessed technology capable of disabling our ships without conventional weapons fire. Kath finally turned from the viewport. Someone gave them that technology, or they discovered it themselves. Either way, we underestimated them, and my scouts paid for that mistake with their lives, along with over 100 of our warships. What are your orders, Overlord? Kath was quiet for a long moment. Send word to the Empire. I want reinforcements, a full battle fleet, not the modest force we brought expecting an easy conquest. This will no longer be a simple planetary subjugation. This will be a proper campaign. That will take time, Overlord. Weeks, perhaps longer, for reinforcements to arrive from the nearest Vorn territory. Then we wait, Kath said. But we do not remain idle. Order our remaining ships to establish a defensive perimeter around this system. If the humans believe their victory means we will retreat entirely, they are mistaken. We will hold this system, deny them any further advantage, and wait for the reinforcements that will finish what this failed engagement began. Back on Earth, the celebration following news of the battle's outcome was tempered by caution. General Cole stood before President Torres and a room full of relieved but wary military leaders, delivering her assessment of the situation. The victory was real, Madam President, and the cost of 11 ships was far lower than any of our projections suggested was possible against a fleet of that size. But we need to understand something clearly. The Vorn Empire is not defeated. They still hold a numerical advantage in this system, and Overlord Koth is, according to intelligence gathered from intercepted communications, someone with a lengthy and successful history of conquest. He will not simply abandon this campaign after one setback. What do you recommend? Torres asked. We use this window of opportunity, Cole said. Dr. Yuen's team believes the ion disruptor technology can be improved further, given time and additional resources. We also have a second, smaller fleet still completing construction at facilities on the far side of the moon and at a hidden shipyard beneath the ice of Europa, a project even more secret than the Vanguard fleet itself. Several people in the room exchanged surprised glances at this revelation. How many additional ships? Torres asked. 43, Madam President, though they won't be ready for full deployment for another 2 weeks. In the meantime, I recommend we use diplomatic channels, if any exist, to attempt communication with the Vorn Empire. Not to surrender, but to understand what we're truly facing, and potentially to buy additional time for our forces to prepare. Torres considered this carefully. Do we have any way to establish that kind of communication? We believe so, Madam President, said Dr. Elena Yuen, stepping forward from where she had been observing the meeting. Analysis of the Vorn's original ultimatum message suggests their translation technology operates on a frequency we can replicate, at least partially. It won't be perfect communication, but it should be enough to convey basic messages. Then let's try, Torres said. General Cole, prepare a message. We're not surrendering, but we're willing to discuss terms that don't involve the complete subjugation of our species. Let's see how Overlord Koth responds to an offer of peaceful coexistence, now that he understands we won't simply roll over. The message reached the Vorn flagship 2 days later, translated through Earth's newly adapted communication array. Koth received it with a mixture of curiosity and lingering anger. They wish to negotiate, Threll reported, reading through the translated text. They propose a treaty of mutual respect, non-interference in each other's territories, and an end to hostilities. Koth laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. They destroyed 100 of our ships, and now they speak of mutual respect? This species has more audacity than any I have encountered in 3 centuries of conquest. Overlord, given our current losses, perhaps a negotiated settlement would be... No, Kath said firmly. The Vorn Empire does not negotiate with species we intend to conquer. We negotiate with equals, and this species has not yet proven itself an equal. It has merely proven itself capable of a single tactical victory, through surprise and terrain advantage. When our reinforcements arrive, we will demonstrate the true difference between a lucky battle and a war. Understood, Overlord. Shall I draft a response? Yes, Kath said. Tell them their offer is rejected, and that the original terms of surrender remain in effect, though we will extend some patience while we consider our next course of action. I want them to believe we are still weighing our options, giving them false hope that peace might still be achieved, while our reinforcements make their way to this system. Aboard the Valiant, Captain Reyes read the Vorn's response with a grim expression, sharing it with his senior officers gathered in the ship's small briefing room. They're stalling, Vasquez said, studying the translated message. This doesn't read like genuine consideration of peace terms. This reads like someone buying time. I agree, Reyes said, which means they're likely waiting for reinforcements, same as we're using this time to bring our own additional ships online. The question is whose reinforcements will arrive first, and in what numbers. Lieutenant Singh spoke up from where she'd been reviewing sensor data from the ongoing surveillance of Vorn fleet movements. Captain, we've noticed something interesting. The remaining Vorn ships have shifted from an offensive posture to what looks like a defensive perimeter around the system's outer edge, rather than remaining concentrated above Earth. Reyes leaned forward, studying the display Singh brought up. Show me. The display revealed Vorn ships spread thin across a wide defensive line at the edge of the solar system, rather than the concentrated force that had originally arrived above Earth's major cities. They're watching for something, Reyes said slowly. Reinforcements, has to be. They've pulled back to secure the approach routes into the system, probably to link up with additional forces the moment they arrive. If we knew when and where those reinforcements would arrive, Vasquez said, we could potentially strike them before they even reach the main Vorn fleet, further reducing their numbers before the real fight begins. That's a significant if, Reyes cautioned. We'd need intelligence on Vorn reinforcement routes we simply don't have access to. Perhaps not entirely true, came a new voice. Dr. Yuan had joined the briefing via secure video link from Earth. My team has been analyzing wreckage recovered from the disabled scout ships and destroyed vessels from the battle in the asteroid field. We've recovered partial navigational data that suggests Vorn ships typically approach new systems along specific gravitational pathways, essentially natural highways through space, created by the alignment of stars and massive celestial bodies. You're saying you can predict where their reinforcements will emerge into this system, Reyes said. With reasonable confidence, yes, Yuan confirmed. Not perfect certainty, but enough to narrow down the likely arrival points to perhaps 3 or 4 locations at the edge of the system. Reyes considered this information carefully. General Cole needs to hear this immediately. If we can position forces to intercept Vorn reinforcements before they combine with Kath's existing fleet, we might be able to prevent this war from ever reaching the scale he's clearly hoping for. The plan that emerged from subsequent discussions between Earth Command and the fleet leadership was audacious in scope. Rather than waiting passively for the Vorn reinforcements to arrive and combine with Kath's existing forces, the newly completed 43 ships from the hidden Europa shipyard, along with a portion of the Vanguard fleet, would be positioned at the most likely arrival points identified by Dr. Yuan's analysis. This is a significant gamble, General Cole said during a final strategy session with President Torres and the assembled fleet commanders, including Reyes participating via secure video link. If Dr. Yuan's analysis is wrong, we'll have split our forces for nothing, potentially weakening our defense of Earth itself at a critical moment. And if she's right? Torres asked. If she's right, we have the opportunity to intercept and potentially destroy or severely damage Vorn reinforcements before they ever reach Kath's main fleet, fundamentally changing the balance of this entire conflict in our favor. Torres looked around the room at the assembled faces, each carrying the weight of decisions that would affect the fate of the entire human species. What's your recommendation, General? Cole took a breath before answering. I recommend we take the gamble, Madam President. This war will not end through pure defense. If we simply wait for Kath to accumulate overwhelming force and then attack us directly, even our best tactics may not be enough to save Earth. Our best chance lies in being proactive, using every advantage available to us, including intelligence we've gathered at great cost. Torres nodded slowly. Then we proceed with the plan. General Cole, coordinate the deployment. Captain Reyes, your fleet will need to divide its forces according to Dr. Yuan's projected arrival points. I want constant updates on this operation. The fate of this planet may well depend on what happens in the next several days. 3 days later, sensors at one of Dr. Yuan's identified arrival points detected a massive gravitational disturbance, the telltale sign of ships entering the system through faster-than-light travel. Aboard a hidden formation of 63 human ships, a combination of Vanguard fleet vessels and the newly arrived Europa shipyard ships, Commander Elena Vasquez, now promoted to lead this critical interception force, watched the arrival with a mixture of anticipation and dread. Confirmed contact, her sensor officer reported. Estimated 180 Vorn warships emerging at our position. This is significantly larger than our intelligence projections suggested. Vasquez felt her stomach tighten at the number. 180 ships against her force of 63. Even with the ion disruptor technology and the element of surprise, these were daunting odds. All ships, maintain silent running, Vasquez ordered, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Let them fully emerge from transit before we commit to any action. I want to understand their formation and disposition before we strike. The massive Vorn reinforcement fleet continued to emerge into normal space, engines flaring to life as they oriented themselves toward their intended rendezvous point with Koth's forces near Earth. Vasquez watched, calculating the odds, understanding that the decision she made in the next few minutes would likely determine not just the outcome of this engagement, but potentially the course of the entire war for humanity's survival. Commander Elena Vasquez watched the massive Vorn reinforcement fleet finish its emergence into normal space, 180 warships arranging themselves into a traveling formation, meant for a journey toward Earth, not for immediate combat. This was the moment that mattered most. They were not yet braced for battle. Sensor officer, confirm their weapon status, Vasquez said quietly. Weapon systems appear to be in standby mode, Commander. Shields are at standard cruising strength, not combat readiness. They don't expect an attack here. Vasquez allowed herself a small, tight breath. This was exactly the opening Dr. Yuan's analysis had promised, and exactly the kind of advantage that could offset the significant numerical disadvantage her 63 ships faced against 180 Vorn vessels. All ships, this is Commander Vasquez, she said over the fleet-wide channel, her voice carrying to every human crew hidden in the darkness around the newly arrived Vorn formation. We have one chance to make this strike count. Target their engines and command vessels first. If we can cripple their ability to maneuver and coordinate before they organize a defense, we even the odds significantly. On my mark. The 63 human ships, positioned in a wide arc around the unsuspecting Vorn formation, waited in silence as Vasquez studied the enemy fleet one final time, identifying the largest vessels that likely carried command functions. Fire. Ion disruptors and conventional weapons fire erupted from the hidden human formation, tearing into the Vorn reinforcement fleet before a single alarm could properly sound aboard their ships. Engines flared and died across dozens of vessels as ion strikes found their mark. Several of the largest Vorn ships, clearly command vessels, went dark in the opening seconds of the assault, their systems overwhelmed by concentrated disruptor fire. Chaos erupted across the Vorn formation as ships that had been cruising peacefully toward a rendezvous suddenly found themselves under devastating attack from an enemy they hadn't even detected. Without functioning command vessels to coordinate a response, the surviving Vorn ships began firing somewhat randomly, some engaging the human attackers while others attempted to flee deeper into the system. Keep pressing the advantage, Vasquez ordered, watching her tactical display with fierce concentration. Target any ship attempting to organize a counterattack. Don't let them regroup. The battle raged for nearly 20 minutes, a chaotic and one-sided engagement as the disorganized Vorn fleet struggled to respond effectively to an enemy that had struck with such precision and surprise. By the time the surviving Vorn ships managed to establish enough coordination to begin an organized retreat back toward the edge of the system, their numbers had been reduced from 180 to just over 60 combat-capable vessels. They're retreating, Commander, her sensor officer reported. Should we pursue? Vasquez considered this carefully. Her own fleet had taken losses as well, 7 ships destroyed and several others damaged during the engagement. Pursuing a retreating enemy into unknown territory carried its own risks. Let them go, Vasquez decided. We've achieved our objective. Send full battle reports to General Cole and Captain Reyes. The reinforcement fleet has been broken before it could combine with Kath's forces. News of the victory reached Earth within hours, spreading through military command channels before eventually reaching the general public, who celebrated with a mixture of relief and renewed hope. Aboard the Valiant, Captain Reyes received the full report from Vasquez with profound satisfaction. 63 ships against 180, and we reduced their reinforcement fleet by 2/3, Reyes said to his assembled bridge crew. This changes everything. Kath's remaining force in this system now stands at roughly 300 ships, but without the reinforcements he was counting on to overwhelm us. What's our next move, Captain? Vasquez asked, having returned to rejoin the main fleet following her successful interception mission. Reyes considered the question carefully before responding. General Cole believes this is the moment to press our advantage fully. Kath has lost significant forces in 2 consecutive engagements, and his remaining fleet, while still substantial, no longer holds the overwhelming numerical superiority he originally possessed. It's time to end this war, not through further delay in maneuvering, but through a decisive engagement that removes any doubt about humanity's ability to defend itself. Aboard the Vorn flagship, Overlord Kath received news of the destroyed reinforcement fleet with an expression that had shifted from anger to something approaching genuine alarm. 300 years of successful conquest had never prepared him for a species capable of anticipating and countering his strategies with such precision. Overlord, our remaining combat-capable forces number 298 vessels, Threll reported grimly. The reinforcement fleet has been effectively destroyed as a combat force, with only 61 ships managing to retreat successfully. Kath stood silently for a long moment, staring at the tactical display showing the current disposition of forces within the system. This species, he finally said, has proven far more capable than any we have encountered in the history of the Empire's expansion. Perhaps it is time to reconsider our approach entirely. Overlord? Threll asked, surprise evident in his voice. Prepare a new message for the humans, Kath said. Not an ultimatum this time, but a genuine proposal for negotiation. If this species can inflict such losses on our forces while defending a single system, imagine what alliance with them might accomplish, rather than continued and costly conflict. You believe they would accept an alliance, after everything that has happened? Koth considered this. I believe they have earned the right to be treated as more than a conquered species. The Empire has faced setbacks before, from formidable opponents, and in some cases, we have found it more beneficial to forge alliances with worthy adversaries than to continue costly campaigns of conquest. This may be one of those situations. The message that reached Earth several hours later was markedly different in tone from the original ultimatum that had started the entire conflict. General Cole read through the translated text carefully before bringing it to President Torres. They're proposing a genuine ceasefire, Madam President, and an offer to discuss terms of mutual recognition rather than subjugation. Overlord Kath acknowledges that Earth has demonstrated capabilities that warrant reconsideration of the Empire's original approach. Torres read through the message herself, her expression cautious but hopeful. Do we trust this offer, General? I believe we should proceed carefully, but with genuine consideration, Cole said. Our position has strengthened considerably over the past several days. We've destroyed or disabled a significant portion of their forces, and they clearly recognize that continuing this conflict would come at a substantial cost to them as well. This may be a genuine opportunity to end hostilities on terms that preserve Earth's sovereignty and independence. What do you recommend as our response? I recommend cautious acceptance, Cole said. We propose a formal meeting, conducted with appropriate security precautions on both sides, to negotiate terms of peaceful coexistence. We make clear that Earth's sovereignty is non-negotiable, but we remain open to establishing diplomatic and potentially even trade relations with the Vorn Empire, provided the terms genuinely respect our independence. Torres nodded slowly. Draft the response, General. Let's see if we can end this conflict without further loss of life on either side. The negotiations that followed took place aboard a neutral vessel, a repurposed human transport ship modified with basic Vorn communication equipment, positioned at a midpoint between Earth and the Vorn fleet's current position. General Cole led the human delegation, while Overlord Kath himself attended for the Vorn Empire, an unusual choice that Cole recognized as a significant gesture given the overlord's status within his own civilization. "Your species has surprised us," Kath said through the translation system, his voice carrying a note of what might have been respect, though it was difficult to fully interpret across such vastly different forms of expression. "In 3 centuries of expansion, few worlds have resisted our forces with such effectiveness, and none have done so while also demonstrating genuine willingness to negotiate, rather than simply celebrating victory. We didn't want this war," Cole replied through her own translator. "We simply refused to surrender our independence without resistance. If your empire is genuinely willing to recognize Earth's sovereignty and establish relations based on mutual respect rather than subjugation, we are willing to move forward from this conflict." The negotiations continued for several days, addressing complex questions of territorial boundaries, resource rights within the solar system, and the establishment of formal diplomatic channels between Earth and the broader Vorn Empire. Eventually, a treaty emerged that satisfied both parties. Earth would remain fully independent and sovereign, free from any Vorn interference in its internal affairs, while agreeing to establish limited trade relations and diplomatic recognition with the Empire, opening the possibility of future cooperation between the two civilizations. 6 months after the signing of the treaty, General Sarah Cole stood on a balcony overlooking Colorado Springs, watching her son Ethan play in the yard below with a group of friends, blissfully unaware of just how close humanity had come to losing everything during those tense days when alien warships filled the sky above every major city on Earth. Captain Marcus Reyes had been promoted to Admiral, now overseeing the continued development and expansion of Earth's space defense forces, a program no longer secret but publicly celebrated as the force that had saved humanity from conquest. The Vanguard fleet, once hidden among the asteroids in complete secrecy, now operated openly as the foundation of Earth's growing space navy, with new ships being constructed at shipyards across the solar system, no longer needing to hide from anyone. Commander Elena Vasquez had taken command of a new exploration division, tasked with using the diplomatic opening created by the treaty with the Vorn Empire to begin cautious exploration of neighboring star systems, always with an escort of armed warships, a lesson humanity had learned well from the events of the past year. Dr. Elena Yuen continued her research into the recovered alien technology, now working alongside actual Vorn scientists who had been assigned to Earth as part of the diplomatic exchange established by the treaty, each side learning from the other in ways that would have seemed impossible during those first terrifying hours when the sky over New York had turned dark with the shadows of an invading fleet. President Torres, in a speech delivered to the United Nations several months after the treaty's signing, reflected on the events that had nearly cost humanity its freedom. "We were given an ultimatum," she said, her words broadcast across every screen on the planet, and, through the new diplomatic channels established with the Vorn Empire, across their territories as well. "We were told to surrender our weapons, our authority, our very way of life, or face destruction. Instead, we answered with warships that we had built in secret, prepared for a threat we hoped would never come. We answered with the courage of every soldier, every scientist, and every citizen who refused to accept subjugation as our fate. And in doing so, we didn't just save our world. We proved that humanity, when faced with the darkest of threats, will always choose to stand and fight for its freedom, rather than kneel in surrender." The applause that followed her words echoed not just through the halls of the United Nations, but across a planet that had come closer than most would ever fully understand to losing everything, and had instead emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to take its place among the stars, as a species that could never again be underestimated. Far above Earth, the ships of the Vanguard fleet continued their patrols, no longer hidden in secret among the asteroids, but standing openly as a testament to humanity's resolve. And somewhere among the stars, Overlord Kath, having returned to Vorn Empire territory, with a newfound respect for the small blue planet he had once dismissed as an easy conquest, carried with him a lesson that would echo throughout the Empire for generations to come. Some species, no matter how young or seemingly primitive they appeared, possessed a will to survive and a capacity for resistance that could never be safely ignored. Humanity had answered the ultimatum with warships, and in doing so, had written the first chapter of its story among the stars, a chapter defined not by surrender, but by the unbreakable will to remain free.